Hari Om. Good evening and a very warm welcome on the second day of series of talks titled Growing in Devotion, No God, No Peace. No God, No Peace by Swami Aparajitananda ji. I am Vipul Dalal, a study class member. I invite Alka Sadrangani, study group coordinator, to chant the invocation.
Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Samast Jan Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram.
Thank you, Alka. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our Aarti Yajman for today, CSR Mohan Rao ji. Those of you who would like updates on our future programs and haven't filled in the Google registration form, kindly fill out the form. We would also request you to check the Chinmaya Mission Mumbai website, where you would get a lot of information about our activities. And you can also order online from our various publications, DVDs, and CDs of our talks. Those of you who wish to contribute, become Yajmans and offer Dakshina can also do so by clicking the payment link. For your convenience, the Google form, website, and payment link are posted here on the chat. Yesterday, Swami Aparajitananda ji explained in such simple terms: 1, the meaning of devotion; 2, the difference between divine love and worldly love; 3, the immense benefits to us of true devotion; 4, the true test of devotion is when we face calamities and when we suffer, not when all is well; 5, and an excellent analogy of babies and their practical lessons to understand devotion. Swamiji, we are all looking forward to your talk today. Please note, we will have a Q&A followed by Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananji's Aarti at the end of the talk. Kindly ensure to turn off your video and keep your mic on mute throughout the talk so that you do not experience any disturbance. The talks will also be available on the Chinmaya Mission Mumbai YouTube channel. Thank you. We will now begin the talk with pranams. Over to you, Swamiji.
Hari Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। जय जय राम जानकी राम, जय जय राम जानकी राम। रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम, रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम, जय जय राम जानकी राम। तापसरंजन तारक नामा, तापसरंजन तारक नामा, दानव भंजन कोदंड रामा, दानव भंजन कोदंड रामा, जय जय राम जानकी राम। श्री राम जय राम, जय जय 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 राम। जानकी राम श्री रघुराम, श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम। श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम। श्री राम जय राम, जय जय राम। जय जय राम जानकी राम, जानकी राम। बोलिए सियावर रामचंद्र की जय। So yesterday we started with a definition of what is devotion for God. So what is devotion? In simple terms, devotion is nothing but the emotion of love directed towards God. Now, how is this divine love unique compared with worldly love? This divine love is such that when it fills our heart, we get a glimpse of our perfect nature, of our immortal nature. And this devotion is such that it makes us completely fulfilled and totally contented. This doesn't happen with worldly love. And that is the reason divine love is sought after by all wise people, the noble people, the devotees, the saints, the sages. They all seek this one thing from God. So yesterday we had also seen the two types of devotion, the wavering devotion and unwavering devotion. In the beginning, we all have to start with wavering devotion. And why does this devotion waver? Our devotion wavers because our attachment to the world is stronger than our attachment to God. When this happens, the devotion wavers, especially when tragedies and calamities, etc. come. Somewhere the mind becomes busy with worldly worries and anxieties, and in the process, the mind forgets God. Now, this is called devotion in its wavering state. We doubt God, we doubt the existence of God, we doubt the love of God, justice of God. All these things happen when devotion wavers. So therefore, we must cultivate unwavering devotion for God. This 3-day talk is a discussion on how to cultivate this unwavering devotion for God. So yesterday we were seeing that the method to cultivate this devotion, this love for God, is the same as how a child cultivates devotion for its mother. So therefore, let us learn this art, let us learn this method, let us learn this technique of how to cultivate devotion from these little children. Yesterday I was saying that these babies are the happiest beings in this world. So how to become happy through devotion? Let us learn the technique of gaining this happiness from the happiest beings, namely the little children. Right. So now let us enter into the world of a little child. The moment the child is born into the world, so this is a complete transition. The child is born from the world of womb to this external world. That is how the child enters into this external world. Bhagavan is extremely kind, compassionate. He takes care of everyone. The Lord knows that the child will not be able to handle this bombardment of the external world all of a sudden. The child will not be able to handle it. The child has been used to a different kind of world, the world of the womb. Now the child is coming to a new world. All of a sudden, this child will not be able to handle this world. So therefore, what did this Lord, out of his extreme compassion, what did this Lord do? He made all the senses, the sense organs of the child inactive, so that the child will not experience the bombardment of this external world. So you will find when the child is born, it is not able to see, it is not able to hear, etc. All these major sense organs, especially the ability to see and ability to hear, they are considered to be predominant in our interaction with the outer world. So these sense organs are deliberately made dormant, deliberately made inactive, so that the child will not be affected by these sense organs. And so once the child comes out, slowly, this sense organs start manifesting itself. These sense organs start becoming active, and slowly the external world starts entering into this little child. Slowly, in a graded fashion. In all this, we will have to see the love, the care, and the compassion of that omniscient Lord. How beautifully he is taking care of this little child. The syllabus is given in a graded fashion. All of a sudden, this complicated world cannot enter into the baby and should not enter into the baby. The special care is taken. Exactly like we give the syllabus for little children. Small children are given A for apple, B for ball. That is enough. Later on, slowly the child is introduced to 1, 2, 3, etc. Then the child is introduced to addition, subtraction. Then the child is introduced to multiplication, division. Slowly enters the complicated mathematical things. And finally, the very same child, once it grows up, it is able to handle complicated, advanced mathematics. The child is able to handle language. But in the beginning, the starting is always with A for apple, B for ball. In the same way, this little child also is exposed little by little of the external world. Not all of a sudden. For example, the eyes, if you see the newborn baby, you will find that the eyes are closed. Why the eyes are closed? Because the eyes will not be able to handle this extreme light coming from the outer world. Because the world of the womb is the world of darkness, and now the child is coming into the world of light. The eyes cannot handle this light all of a sudden. So you will find that a newborn baby has its eyes closed. And slowly, the eyes open up. Even though the eyes are open, it is not able to see. And slowly the child is given the ability to focus. And it is said that in the initial days, the child is not able to see whole world, etc. No, only a few inches in front of it, only that much. See the care of the Lord. Only a few inches in front of the child is able to see. The rest of the whole infinite expanse of the world is completely hidden as far as the child is concerned. So the child is exposed to a small external world. And then slowly. And in the beginning also it is said, the child is only able to distinguish between black and white. That's all. The child's brain cannot distinguish between various colors. A specific care is taken. The child is not burdened with complications of the world. And slowly, as the days progress, each and every sense organ start manifesting itself, start becoming active. And now slowly the world enters into the child. Now there is Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Child is able to see, the child is able to hear, smell, touch, taste. Slowly the child is exposed to the outer world. And now what happens when the sense organs become active? The attention of the child goes from inside to outside through these sense organs. The child is able to pay attention to the sparsha rupa rasa gandha of the world. The sense organs are the means, they are the outlets, they are the gates through which we go out and become extrovert. This is what happens. And now the child starts experiencing the world. Now, what is the most important thing when we live in this world? The most important thing is the knowledge of who am I. It is not just the seekers who need to know who am I. Even to live in this world, one must have this knowledge. Who am I? So then this child, he has to find the answer for this. So it observes the experiences in the world. Remember the technique of learning. Observe experiences in life. Analyze these experiences and come to the right conclusion. So this set of conclusion is called understanding, knowledge. So now the child observes the experiences in life, and what does the child find? The child clearly finds that in this world there is something called this body, and whatever happens to this body happens to me. If there is a pain in this body, that pain is experienced by me. If there is pain in somebody else's body, it is not experienced by me. But if there is a pain in this body, I experience it. There is a direct connection between my experience and this body. Also, I have freedom in moving these limbs, the hands, legs, etc. I can decide when to move, how to move, etc. So the child observes that this body is something which is directly connected to it. So slowly it comes to this conclusion, this body is me, and anything other than this body is a part of the world. So through observation, through analysis, intelligent, logical analysis, by then the brain also is developed to do this analysis. Only then Bhagavan has exposed the child to this world. The brain is capable of doing this analysis. Logical thinking is possible. And now the child comes to this conclusion, a great conclusion. He gets the answer of who am I? Who is me? I am none other than this body. How did you come to this conclusion? Anything happening in this body is happening to me. I experience it, whether it is joy or sorrow, whether it is pain or pleasure, I directly experience it. Therefore, this boundary of this body is my boundary, it is me. So now the child has a clear understanding, this is me, that is world. I and not I, me and not me, I and the world. This is the first knowledge the child gains. Observe, analyze, conclude. Right. Now, what are the other things which he concludes through his observation? So yesterday we had seen 5 lessons he learns. What are the 5 lessons? Number 1, there is need, there is pain, there is suffering in this life, in this body. This body has its needs, it has got pain and suffering. Lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. This need can be fulfilled. This pain and suffering can be completely removed. It is possible. Though it is a very uncomfortable thing, we can put an end to this pain and suffering. Lesson number 3. Remember, all these lessons are learned by observation. Lesson number 3. I cannot, with my own effort, I cannot put an end to this pain and suffering. I cannot fulfill these needs. I am not capable of it. I am incapable. I am helpless. Lesson number 3. Lesson number 4. I will have to depend on others to fulfill these needs of mine. To come out of this pain and suffering, I will have to depend on others. And lesson number 5, unless I request for help, the help will not come. So I will have to request. Lesson number 5. Now, from these 5 lessons, what does he conclude? The conclusion is, I am utterly helpless. The conclusion is, I am utterly helpless. The child is aware of this fact. Utter helplessness is the conclusion. Now, this conclusion is very interesting because the moment we start depending upon our sense organs, the moment we start going out into the external world through our sense organs, what happens? We get disconnected from the divine, because going out means getting disconnected from the divine. Going in means getting connected to the divine. What is the end result of going out through the senses into the world? What is the end result? The end result is the experience of utter helplessness. That is why in Kathopanishad it is said, Paranchi khani vyatranat swayam bhuhu tasmat parang pashyate nantaratman. These sense organs, these indriyas, they have literally killed the Lord seated in the heart. Vyatranat swayam bhuhu. These sense organs have killed the Lord. Why? It takes the attention. It takes our attention into the world. It makes us extrovert. It makes us look outside, and therefore we don't experience the Lord seated in our heart. Our attention goes outwards, though the Lord is right here in our own heart, but we don't experience. And non-experience is almost equal to non-existence, because you are not experiencing the ananda of the Lord. The benefits of the presence of the Lord is not experienced. Therefore, it is equivalent to saying that there is no Lord. It is equivalent to saying as though you have killed the Lord in you. This is exactly what happens to this child also. Till then, it was connected to the divine because the sense organs were not operative. But the moment the sense organs became operative, the child started interacting in the world through the sense organ. He went out. And what is the end result of going out? The end result is utter helplessness. Now, this utter helplessness makes him absolutely egoless. Because the moment you realize that you are helpless, you can never boost your ego. The ego cannot get boosted in a state of helplessness. You cannot become egoistic. You cannot become boastful. You realize your insignificance. So therefore, Utter helplessness leads to absolute egolessness, the second characteristics of a child. Now, utter helplessness combined with the instinct to survive takes him to the third characteristics, which is extreme alertness. Utter helplessness combined with the survival instinct. All of us, we desire to live, we desire to exist. We don't want to become non-existent because that is our nature. Sat is our nature, existence is our nature. Therefore, every one of us, we want to live. Now, what is the definition of the child about itself? I am this body. So the existence of this body is my existence. I want to exist, but I am helpless. So what happens to a child who experiences helplessness? And at the same time, there is an intense desire to exist. What happens? Such a child automatically becomes extremely alert. It is the instinct to survive that makes us extremely alert. If you see this Animal Planet, etc., when the buffalo is surrounded by lions, buffalo is considered to be the most tamasic animal, lazy fellow, dull fellow. Even that lazy, dull buffalo becomes extremely alert the moment it finds that there is a threat to its life. You see those eyes bulging out. It is out of fear. The fear that my life is in danger. So even a tamasic, most tamasic, dull fellow also will also experience a peak of alertness when the life is under threat. So this child, who knows it is absolutely helpless, this child becomes extremely alert. So this is the third characteristics of a baby. So what are the characteristics? Number one, utter helplessness. Number two, absolute egolessness. And number three, extreme alertness. These three become the characteristic of a child. And this we can consider the most auspicious environment for the child to become quick learners, fast learners, the greatest learners. You will be amazed to hear that 95% of all our knowledge which we acquire in our entire life, 95% of the knowledge is acquired in the first 5 years. The studies have shown. Can you believe? In the first 5 years, we acquire 95% of the entire knowledge throughout our life. How is it that this child is able to gain this knowledge in those just 5 years? The child is able to gain this knowledge because the child is exposed to such a conducive, auspicious environment. And what is that environment? Utter helplessness, extreme alertness, and absolute egolessness. This is that auspicious environment in which the child becomes the best learners, the quick learners, fastest learners. Yesterday, somebody was asking, Swamiji, how is it that we have lost this ability to learn? We have lost this ability because these three aspects went missing as we start growing up. We became casual, alertness gone. We became little egoistic. I know everything. That attitude came. And that helpless nature also gone because we know how to live. So when these three factors became diluted, our ability to gain knowledge also gone. You will find that humility is directly connected to gaining the ability to gain knowledge. Vidya dadati vinayam, they say. They are very intimately connected. To the extent a person is humble, to that extent, that person is able to gain more and more knowledge, more and more knowledge. Humility and knowledge, they go together. In the same way, arrogance or ego and ignorance, they go together. That's why you will find in the society people who have gained great knowledge, famous people, highly knowledgeable people in the society, wise people in the society, they are very, very humble. You will always find this because they go together. Socrates was declared the wisest man in Greece by oracle. So all those people, they gathered around Socrates, said, "Sir, you have been declared the wisest man. What do you have to say about it?" It is said Socrates told them, "I know only one thing, that I don't know anything." This was the answer of Socrates, the wisest man. I know only one thing, that I don't know anything. Humility and knowledge, it is very much connected. The more I think that I know, the lesser I am capable of knowing. That's why we have this beautiful Zen story. So one professor, learned professor, he went to one Zen master and he started talking. He came saying that I want to learn from you. But then he went on talking, not allowing the Zen master to open his mouth. The disciple was talking and the guru was silent. He went on talking. And finally, suddenly he realized that guru has not spoken anything. This master had not spoken anything. Then said, "Sir, you have not spoken anything." So it was tea time. So then this master, he just kept an empty cup and started pouring the tea. Kept on pouring. It was brimful, it was overflowing, but he kept on pouring it. Immediately the professor says, "Sir, stop, it's overflowing." Zen master said, "Exactly." The Zen story is over there. All these Zen stories are like that. There is an abrupt end. The point is this: if you think that you know everything, then you know nothing. Not only that you know nothing, you will not be able to learn anything. This is the message. That which is full cannot be filled. So that's why we find the wise people, the great people in every field, you will find one quality in them, and that is humility. Isaac Newton, I'm sure you must have heard this. Isaac Newton, on his deathbed, somebody asked, "Sir, you must be really a proud man. How many mysteries of the universe you have unraveled? You must be indeed a proud man." So it is said, Isaac Newton told this person, instead of feeling proud. I feel like a small child picking pebbles from the seashore while the entire infinite ocean lies in front of me unexplored. So what I get is only little pebble. What I know is nothing compared to what remains to be known. This was the answer of Isaac Newton. Bhagwan Shankaracharya also, a person who mastered all scriptures by the age of 8, and by the age of 16 or so, he had written all commentaries. That was the brilliant intellect of Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya. Somebody asked him, Guru, you are so brilliant, you know so much. At that time, it is said, Bhagwan Shankaracharya had the stick with him, Dharmadanda. Ganga was flowing, so they were on the banks of Ganga. He just dipped his stick in the Ganges, and then he lifted the stick. He said, what do you see? Guru, I see some water droplets. It is said, Shankaracharya told him, if all the knowledge of this world is equal to this Ganga, then what I know is that are dripping from the stick. See the humility. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also. So he used to go to Samadhi. So there used to be a lady. So everybody thought that Ramakrishna was a mad fellow. Young, mad chap. This was what everybody in the village thought. But then came a lady, a saintly lady, Brahmani. And looking at these characteristics of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, this lady said, this is an avatar of the Lord. He is not an ordinary human being. He is an avatar of the Lord. A stunning revelation in that village. All the great people had come. Then somebody went and asked Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, see, people are saying that you are an avatar of the Lord. What do you have to say about yourself? Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, I don't know anything. I only know that I am at best at the feet of the devotees. This is all what I know about myself. All those avatar and all, I don't know. Look at that. So what I'm trying to say is, egolessness and knowledge, they go together. It is said that the water of knowledge, they cannot remain in the egoistic mountain peaks. It cannot stay there. It always flows down. Just like the water flows from the higher to the lower, knowledge also flows from the higher to the lower. That's why in our culture, we place the highest part of the body at the lowest part of the Guru. We place our head at the feet of the teacher, so that there is a great difference between the higher and the lower. Only then the knowledge can flow from the higher to the lower. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is, egolessness is a great virtue. And this great virtue is absolutely essential to learn. And this little child has it by birth. So in this auspicious environment of utter helplessness, of extreme alertness, of absolute egolessness, the child gathers, devours knowledge. Right? Yes. So what is the opinion of the child about itself? What is the understanding of the child about itself? The child knows, I am a helpless, incapable, insignificant nobody. This is the understanding of the child about itself. I am nothing, I know nothing, I have nothing, I can do nothing. This is the understanding of the child about itself. How did it come to this understanding? The child came to this understanding by observation and analysis of its own life's experiences. Right. This is about itself. Now the next part is his understanding about his mother. So the child knows that there are needs in this world. There is pain and suffering. So therefore I will have to depend on others. So how does this child let others know that I am in need of something? The only way the child has is cry and scream. That is also a blessing of the Lord for the child. Don't worry, even if you don't know the language, I will give you the ability to cry, to scream, to shout. This ability I give you. This is a blessing of the Lord. We can say this is the prayer of the child, invoking the help of others. So the child cries when it is in pain, when it is in suffering, the child cries. And then the child is also watching. When I cry, who are the people who come to me? So the child is observing. Remember this observing thing. The child is observing. So when I cry, who are the people who come to me? So the child sees so many faces. There are faces which entertain the child. There are faces which laugh at the child, laugh to the child. All kinds of faces are there. There are so many faces which come and go. But the child observes that there is one face. There is this one lady. 99% of the time, whenever I am in need, whenever I cry in pain, it is this lady's face which I face to face. This is the lady who comes to me all the time, most of the time. And what does this child observe in the face of this lady? The child observes that whenever I am in pain, this lady is also in pain. My feelings are reflected on her face. When I am happy, this lady is happy. When I am in pain, this lady is also in pain. And there is a sincere concern to remove my pain. And this lady, the child observes. She sacrifices everything to take care of me. She has time for me. She considers me as the highest priority in life. So whenever I'm in trouble, whenever I cry, she leaves everything and comes to me. That itself shows that for her, I am the most important. She has kept me on the highest priority list. This the child observes. Not once or twice, again and again, again and again. Every time this the child observes. So child sees that sacrifice, priority, identification, concern. So this child, from all these things, what does the child conclude? The child observes, analyzes, and concludes. What does the child conclude? The child concludes that this lady loves me. This lady values me. I am important for this lady. This is the conclusion. Because what are the signs of love? Wherever there is love, there is concern, there is identification, there is sacrifice. Wherever there is love, that person spends time, there is time for the beloved. So all these things show that this lady loves me, this lady values me. A very important conclusion. Moreover, the child also observes that whenever I cry in pain, this lady comes running to me. And every time she comes to me, she does something, and every time she finishes the job, I am at peace, my pain goes away, I am comfortable. For example, When I'm hungry, she comes and feeds me, and the pang of hunger gone. My misery is gone. I'm comfortable. When I'm soaked in urine and filth, I cry out of misery, discomfort. This lady comes running. She does something, cleans me, changes all those clothes, etc. And then after she has done her job, I'm cozy, I'm comfortable. Every time she does her job, she leaves me happier, more peaceful, comfortable. Sometimes I struggle to get sleep because of too much of distraction. She sings some lullaby and I slip into sleep. Sometimes I struggle out of loneliness. I become scared. She comes running, and in her company, I get rid of that sense of loneliness. Sometimes I'm bored of this bondage because there is no movement, all the time lying down. I'm bored. She comes, lifts me, takes me around, and my boredom is gone. So every time she comes, she makes me happier. So therefore, now what is the conclusion? The conclusion is, she is valuable for me because she is the source of happiness for me. Therefore, I value her, I love her. This is the conclusion. What was the earlier conclusion? She loves me, she values me. And now I love her, I value her. Time and again and again, day after day, child is seeing this. Child is observing these experiences. And the child analyzes these experiences. And then this child comes to this conclusion. The mother values me, loves me. I love my mother. I value my mother. This bonding the bonding between the child and the mother becomes very, very strong in this process. And a time comes, the child has extreme love, faith, surrender, trust in mother. And finally, the mantra of happiness for the child is, what is the mantra of happiness? If I am with my mother, only then I am happy. So what should I do to become happy and secure? There is only one question which I have to ask to myself. Is my mother with me or not? This is the only question I have to ask. I don't have to worry about the complexities of the world. I don't have to worry about the mysteries of the world. I need not know anyone. I need not know anything. I have to just know one thing. And what is that one thing? Is my mother with me or not? That's the only thing which I have to ensure in this world. Right. This is the knowledge which the child has. And this child is the happiest being in this world, because the child knows, if my mother is with me, I don't have to bother about anything, because the mother knows everything. I just have to ensure that I should be with my mother. And such a child is the happiest being in this world. Superficially, it is the most undeserving being for happiness, because it doesn't know anything. It can't feed itself, it can't clean itself, most undeserving. But wonder of wonders, this undeserving being, a Mr. Nobody, is the happiest being in this world. Right. Now, some of you may say, Swamiji, you are unnecessarily exaggerating the whole thing. I don't think that this small child is capable of observing and analyzing. And I don't think so. Swamiji, you are adding too much of masalas in your talk. Well, now let us test the knowledge of this child. Because you have to test. Really, is the knowledge of this child strong enough? Can it pass the test? So therefore, in this world, there are so many worldly temptations which test the love of the child towards its mother. Worldly temptations are there. So now let us discuss one such temptation. So here is this mother. She always carries this little baby. Now I'm talking of this, olden days, village scenario. So in the olden days, normally they had very few shops. So it was a common practice that the ladies go from one house to another just to borrow some salt or sugar or some curry leaves or whatever, some spices, etc. So whenever she goes, there is another added benefit, and that is, along with it, she also refreshes herself with gossip. In village, a very, very common thing. They update themselves through gossip. What is happening? What all things are happening in the village in different houses? Who is getting married to whom? Who is getting engaged to whom? Who has run away from whom? So many other things. So all these discussions happen. They go for borrowing something, but it takes almost 1 hour for them to finish all the gossip. And it is this gossip which refreshes them and updates them to the latest happenings in the village. Have you ever wondered why gossip refreshes us? Have you ever wondered? Generally, what happens in gossip is you pull down everybody except yourself. You criticize everybody, find fault with everybody except yourself. So who is the only one left? Who is free from all defects? You. So then you feel nice about yourself. That's why I'm calling it refreshing gossip. Whenever the ego is boosted, you feel nice. And gossip is a psychological way of boosting your ego. You are not talking great about yourself, but you talk ill of others. And finally, there is only one person left free from all defects, and that is you. You feel nice about it. Anyway, that is not our topic. So this lady takes this baby, goes to the neighboring house for a little chit chat. Now, the baby should not be an interference in their gossip. So the lady of the other house, so both of them are there, she gives something to eat for the child, some sweet or some toys are given. And now the baby is busy with the sweet and the toys, etc. Baby is busy there. And these ladies, they have this refreshing chat. So 1 hour passes by, and suddenly this mother of the child, she says, sorry, I have to go because lunch has to be prepared. I have to go. The father of this baby is going to come. He will come for lunch. So I have to go. So now, as she is going, she comes to know that the baby is busy, completely immersed in that toy, playing with the toy. And now, these two ladies, the mother of the child and the lady of the house, they play a game. They test the child. So this mother sees that the child is engrossed, and then this lady of the house says, Pappu, let us say this child is called Pappu. Pappu, you remain here. I will give you nice sweets, nice toys, car and the scooter and the bus, so many toys I have. I will give you, you remain here. Let the mother go. Let the mother go. You remain here. Pappu looks at mother. Mother also tells the same thing. Okay, you remain here. You remain in auntie's house. I am going. She will give you nice toys, etc. So I am going. And she acts as though she is going. She wants to test the love of this child. And now the child sees that the mother is going away. For a split fraction of a second, you can see a kind of blank look in the face of the child. What is he doing? He's weighing. If I have to play with this toy, I will have to lose my mother. She will go away. But if I remain with my mother, I will miss this toy because I cannot carry this toy with me with my mother. You will have to make a choice now. Do you want mother or do you want the toy? This is where the knowledge of the child is tested. Now the child knows. Mother is a permanent source of joy because she is one-stop solution to all my problems. Whereas this toy can give me only impermanent joy. So how can I compare the toy with mother? Impossible. In a fraction of a second, the child comes to this decision that this toy is nothing compared to my mother. You see, the child reveals the viveka in it. What is viveka? Nitya nitya vastu viveka. Mother is nitya, whereas this is anitya. Mother is the source of permanent joy, not this toy. See that? Viveka is there. Discrimination is done. And what is the end result of this viveka? The end result is vairagya. The child throws away the toy and the tears well up. There is this kind of restlessness. The very same toy which was giving joy to this child, the very same toy becomes an object of repulsion, revulsion. He throws it away, becomes miserable, tears well up, and his face expression changes. He shouts and screams. What is that? It is nothing but mumukshutva. Moksho me bhuyat iti ichha. Those people who have studied Tattva Bodha. Desire for liberation. Just imagine, few minutes back he was enjoying everything. The toy, the biscuit, the milk, the company, house, everything. Now he just want to come out of that house. He just want to be with mother. Nothing is going to pacify him. Nothing is going to console him except his mother. Now that feeling, he's like a fish out of water. I want to get liberated from all this so that I can become one with my mother. Now this feeling is a live demonstration of mumukshutva, one of the greatest virtues of seekers. His attitude towards this toy is a live demonstration of vairagya, dispassion. Accordingly, he is very clear. Nothing can compare my mother. Nothing. And then that child, that body language itself shows that I cannot be consoled without my mother. And the child, he doesn't care about who is listening, what others will think of me, nothing doing. And then what happened? That Amma comes running. She lifts the child, hugs the child, showers the child with kisses and say, "Oh, Papu, my dear child, do you think that I will leave you? No, 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 no. You are my apple of the eye, Kanna." In Tamil, they say Kanna. Kanna means eye. You are the apple of my eye. How can I live without you? And the mother hugs the child. And that lady of the house also feels very bad that she hurt the child. So she goes inside and gets one lollipop and she gives to the child as a part of repentance for the sin committed. So that lollipop is given and the child is happy. Now, the child has no problem with lollipop because the lollipop can be along with mother. Mother is also the lollipop. The child accepts the lollipop. And now the child sitting on the side waist of the mother, hugging the mother hugging the child, and all the tears are wiped away the pallu of that mother. Now the child is consoled because it has become one with mother. And that lady goes away. So you see, all those virtues that we have learned in Tattvabodha and Vedanta, etc., sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, you will be amazed. You will find that it is there in the child. Single pointed devotion unto mother. This is called as Ananya Bhakti of Bhagavad Gita. This is called as Avyabhicharini Bhakti mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. The child is very clear. If I want to be happy, I have to be with my mother. That's it. Sometimes in marriage function also you see. So this child is with mother and some nicely dressed girl comes, especially in marriage function, all the family members get together. Some little girl. This little girl, they love to carry some baby around. So they come and say, Papu, come. We'll go to Jhula. There is a Jhula there. Cow is there. Dog is there. Cat is there. Calf is there. This little girl tries to tempt that child. But this child will never go. The moment he hears, he turns his face and hugs his mother to indicate that I don't want to go. You see, the child is absolutely comfortable only when it is with mother. And you might have observed, the child easily goes to sleep when it is with mother. So sleep is also a great psychology. You cannot get sleep if you are in an insecure place, in an uncomfortable place. You can't sleep. If the child is left with some stranger, the child cannot sleep. But the child easily slips into sleep when mother is holding the child, because then the child need not be in that alert mode. It can relax because it is in comfortable, secure, safe hands. This child knows, and end result is sleep. So this tells something about how child feels about you. If the child is able to sleep in your hands, understand the child trusts you. So from this child, we will learn the important lessons of cultivating devotion. How did this child gain this knowledge? Observing, analyzing, coming to certain conclusion, and behaving according to this understanding, this philosophy about life. Now, applying this, that we will do tomorrow. It's a different topic. So let us take up that topic tomorrow. So now let us open the floor for question answer session. Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji. We will now have a 10-minute Q&A session. All those who would like to ask a question, kindly raise your hand in the participants box. And when your name is called out, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Hariom Swamiji, there is a question from Bankim Vakil to the admin, which is, and it says, what is it we do to become childlike?
That is the topic of discussion tomorrow.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just sorry. Okay, sorry.
How to emulate this child is the topic of tomorrow. Hari Om. Ushama. Mute, unmute.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
Swamiji, yes, it is nice to be childlike, but we always want our children to grow up, right? We don't want them to depend on us, and a clinging child is a problem for the mother, right?
It is a problem for a worldly mother, not for a divine mother.
But Swamiji, we live in this transactional world, and mothers do feel that burden. They will feel that burden if the child is always clinging. If it never.
That is why a worldly mother is a limited mother, imperfect mother. Remember, worldly mother is an introduction to the divine mother. First, you are introduced to lower love, and so that from once you master the lower love, you understand the higher love. Lower to the higher, not directly higher. First, learn to love a mother who can be seen. Then you will become fit to learn a mother who cannot be seen.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Shruti Mehra ji, please go ahead.
Hari Om Swamiji. I'm
Hari Om.
sorry, I cannot switch on my video. There is a network problem.
Okay.
Swamiji, my question is that in today's times, the example that you gave was of a village lady, who spends 24 hours of her day with the child and takes the child along everywhere, which helps the bond to develop. In today's big cities and in our world today, it is the maid who is doing this job rather than the mother, unfortunately, most of the time.
Yes.
Mothers are going to work, or they're busy with other things, and it is the maid who is taking place of the mother.
Yes.
Is the bond, Swamiji, between those kids and mothers also that strong, or does that bond then not develop to the level that it did in olden times?
That is why in the modern times you find old age homes. Why old age home? There is no bonding. Mother has no love for the child has no love for mother. Therefore, both of them value only money, and old age home can solve everything through money. So therefore, the very same son or daughter or whatever dumps the father or mother in the old age home. Remember, this old age home business was never there in the ancient times because the bondage was so strong. Every child felt that it is my responsibility, my cheerful responsibility, a happy responsibility to take care of my father and mother. Their hearts were filled with gratitude. And out of gratitude, they used to take care of their parents. How did this gratitude come? It came because the child saw the amount of sacrifice which its parents have taken.
Right, Swamiji. So this does affect the life of a child, the early initial months that you
Of
spend.
course, of course. That is why in our Vedic culture, it is always said that let the husband go out for work, let the mother take care of the household thing and rear the child. In Vedic culture, it was never there that husband and wife both going out for work. No, mother has a very big responsibility of taking care of this child. I may be very rude, very many people may not like it, but I have to tell the fact.
So Swamiji, is this just in the toddler years of the child, or would you suggest this is something that is important through many years of the child's upbringing?
See, as the child grows, its brain also grows, its thinking ability grows, and slowly, the child understands the limitations and imperfections of its worldly mother. This doesn't happen for long. Slowly, the child becomes aware that mother is not all capable. As far as a small baby is concerned, that baby thinks mother is omniscient, omnipotent. She knows everything. But slowly, when the child grows, the child understands that no. Under pressure, even my mother breaks down. There are moments when she cannot give any kind of peace or solace or solution to me. The child understands, and slowly the child shifts the role model from mother to somebody else. It is a natural process. At that time, we have to inculcate bhakti into the minds of the child. So the child understands, okay, worldly mother has limitation, but there is a divine mother, a supreme Lord who is perfect. So the attention should be shifted of the child from the worldly mother to the divine mother.
Thank you, Swami.
Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Nisha Parekh ji, please.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
My question is, one is this lollipop that you mentioned, that the child is happy with the mother as well as the lollipop, because the lollipop is with the mother.
Yes.
So does it mean the lollipop represents the worldly part?
Yes.
So does it mean that, we can have Lord along with the world, or because basically our focus has to be the Lord, like,
Yes.
Lord and only Lord? That is one question.
Yes.
Second, Swamiji, is like you said, 0 to 5. The child's mind set is by which he will be able to grasp knowledge will be the maximum. So
Yes.
if we parents impart spiritual knowledge during this period,
yes,
will the seeds be sown, and will it benefit the child, like, in his latter life?
yes, definitely it will benefit Amma, because that's why we have started the Shishu Vihar now. Earlier we had only Bala Vihar, now we have started Shishu Vihar also. Why?
Yes.
Because that is the purest state of mind. You just, whatever you expose the child will absorb like a sponge. We have seen these Baliviyar sessions and all. Small children learn Vedic chanting in 2 weeks. They are not able to read or anything. They can't even hold this paper properly. Many times they hold it upside down. They are paying attention somewhere, but just by listening to this chanting, they get the entire thing by heart. That is where I understood the purity of this, children's mind. So therefore, it is a responsibility to expose this child to the maximum goodness. Let all good divine samskaras, let the child absorb. So therefore, we have to expose the child to everything good. This is the answer to the second question. Your first question was about lollipop. Yes. You see, Janaka Maharaj, he never renounced his kingdom. He was there. So whatever responsibilities are there, there is nothing wrong in enjoying the world, but your priority should be God.
Okay, Swamiji.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
some people say that when one gets pretty old, he or she starts becoming a child again. Is that right or true? And what can be done about it? And the intensity of devotion when a child has towards mother, can the same level of intensity grow between God and the old person?
See, in some aspects, an old man may be like a child. The old man feels helplessness, etc. But it is not right that child can be compared with an old man. According to Bhajagovindam, Vruddhastava Chintasaktaha is mentioned. In the old age, you have only worries and anxieties and fears. In fact, you start worrying about death also, because death is one thing which takes away everything from you. All your bank balance, your asset, the whole life you have struggled to earn so much. Everything is gone in one shot with death. And after death, where you are going? So many kinds of worries are there, anxieties are there, fears are there. You cannot say that, old age is like you become a child. No way, no way. In some aspect, yes, all the nature's call, you sitting only doing like children. Somebody has to clean you. That way, yes, you are a child.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om. Yes. Sunita Ma. Yes. Please unmute.
Sorry, Prabhas Srinivasan ji.
Okay, Prabhas Srinivasan. By then, you learned the art of unmuting.
No, the admins had not allowed me to unmute. That means I was not able to unmute.
Okay,
I don't have a question. I have taken this opportunity to thank you, because I have never heard of devotion being used, a child being used.
You are in mute now. You are in mute. Yes.
Thank you so much. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, Prabhamma. No, I'm not able to hear. Prabha Srinivasan. No.
Please unmute Miss Prabha Srinivasan.
Prabhama, please unmute. Yes. No, I'm not able to hear. I know what has happened.
You muted yourself again, please. Ask.
Unmute. No.
So we'll have to let this go, because she's not been able to.
Okay.
Geeta Rajan ji, please.
Swamiji, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
I just have one thing. When the child is growing, I mean, you said the development takes place within the 8 years, whatever the child has to learn. But during the process, both the parents, father and mother, and people around the child, they should also, do they have to have a similar thinking when it concerns the child's growth?
See, all are responsible, but mother's role is prominent. That's why I spoke only about mother. I did not speak about anybody else. Because
but the child will not get influenced by the father, or if they don't have the proper agreement between the mother and father. If their thinking is different in respect to the child's upbringing. This question, I wanted your clarification.
This question is out of syllabus, Amma. The topic here is not parenting. The topic here is developing devotion.
Correct. I know, but we are developing devotion in the child.
Now you are asking about father and grandmother and all that. So therefore, this is out of syllabus. The question is devotion, because I am not interested in anything else. I am just interested in how to develop devotion for God. So what all helpful inputs I can get from this child, I am using. That's all.
Okay, this is devotion for the self.
Yes.
Thank you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om. Monica.
Yeah. Monica Nagpal ji, please.
Yes.
Miss Monica Nagpal, can you go ahead?
Hari Om Swamiji, sorry,
Hari
I
Om.
couldn't unmute myself. My question is, as students of Vedanta, we have been constantly reminded that I am not this body, and we have to stop identifying ourselves with that body.
Yes.
But from what I just heard from you, the moment the child is born, and you said by grace of God, he or she slowly develops their senses and starts identifying and believing that I am this body.
Yes.
So isn't it very contradictory, as in, first you learn that, you teach yourself that you are this body, and then as you finally progress in your journey, you have to unlearn what you learned the moment you came into this world.
Yes, yes.
So isn't this very contradictory, and isn't, it's the unveiling, or rather the whole self is veiled the moment you are born, and you're conditioned to believe that I'm this body. So why does this happen? Why does Lord teach you the moment you are born that you are this body, and not the other way around?
See, suppose a child want to become an engineer. Will you directly take the child to the engineering college? Or will you start from A for apple, B for ball?
Yeah, you will start.
Always lessons are taught from gross to subtle. Always.
Okay.
Always lessons are taught from form to formless.
Right.
From gross to abstract. Always.
Right.
Start from what is seen and slowly glide towards what is unseen. So there appears to be a contradiction, but this is unavoidable. Unavoidable.
So is it fair to say that this is part of your journey?
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's a part of your journey. First, learn to love your worldly mother, then you become fit to love divine mother. You see, it is not one step, it is step-by-step journey. In fact, that is the reason why, the whole family drama is enacted. Because we say God is love. When we say define God, God is love. No, love is not something which you can learn by learning some definitions from textbooks. Love is something to be experienced. So for the whole world is nothing but a drama played to make you, to introduce you to love. What is love? You must know. So therefore this drama is there. Now you have loved your worldly mother. Now you understand what is the divine love. You are in a fit position to understand divine love.
All right. Thank you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Yes. Hari Om. Hari Om.
This will be the last question by Asmita, Miss Asmita Dhore.
Ha.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, Amma.
Hari Om. Swamiji, I may be like my question will get answered tomorrow, but because it is lingering in my mind, I thought I should ask you. The child has only one capacity, that is his crying capacity, because that is the way he can get things from his mother, worldly mother. But as an adult, I always have this thought that I have this capacities, right, which I need to use it in the external world. Now, how do I connect this while requesting God to help me? Is like, I need to use my capacity, but without his help, I am capacityless actually. So how to connect this two?
This is tomorrow's topic.
Okay, I thought so.
Application of the story is tomorrow.
Okay, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
I would now like to thank today's Aarti Ajman, CSR Mohan Rauji. Thank you for your contribution and support. Swamiji, on behalf of all of us logged in today, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and thank you for giving us the opportunity to hear from you such a beautiful and inspiring talk and for teaching us how to grow in devotion. We look forward to hearing many more of your talks. Thank you. Today's talk will also be available on Chinmaya Mission Mumbai YouTube channel. Request all now to kindly put on your videos for a Zoom selfie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing all you participants again tomorrow, same time, for day 3 of the talks and also for our future events. Our next event is Spiritual Strength in Difficult Times, based on the values of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, by Swami Swatmanandji, from 25th to the 29th of June, 2021, from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Zoom. Entry is free, but registration is compulsory. For your convenience, the registration link has been put in the chat box. We will now have Gurudev's Aarti.
आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की दिव्य रूप मूर्ति करुणा की आरती सद्गुरु की चरणों में उनके शांति समाए शरणागत की भ्रांति मिटाए पाप ताप संताप हरण की आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की आरती सद्गुरु की वेद उपनिषद गीता को गाया धर्म सनातन फिर से जगाया शुद्ध नीति प्रीति शंकर की आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की आरती सद्गुरु की सिद्ध माणिकी भूमि में नित्य विराजे गुरु हमारे भक्त हृदयानंद स्रोत की आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की दिव्य रूप मूर्ति करुणा की आरती सद्गुरु की आरती सद्गुरु की पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम।